She used to laugh at me, at family dinners, in front of everyone. "Still playing with your little internet videos, Elise?" she'd say, like I wasn't even worth a real answer. "Hi, I'm Elise, and for most of my 20s, I was the invisible one. The joke, the disappointment. But I built something in silence, a company they once mocked. And now, my sister works for me on probation. Would you have hired her, or would you have let her taste the silence she once left you in? I want to hear what you would have done. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm listening. You're almost 30. Still playing with your little internet videos?" The words weren't screamed. They didn't come with anger or malice. They were served cold, the way my sister preferred her critiques, disguised as casual observations, dressed in politeness, and delivered just loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. It was a Sunday in late July, and the sun had no idea it was illuminating my humiliation. I had arrived 10 minutes late to brunch at a trendy cafe in downtown Seattle. The kind with eucalyptus sprigs in mason jars and servers who looked like they were auditioning for indie films. Everyone was already seated by the time I slipped into my chair, one of those wobbly white rattan things that seemed like they'd collapse under the weight of a real conversation. My mother greeted me with a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. "You made it," she said, as if I hadn't confirmed twice. "I did," I replied, brushing off invisible lint from my jeans. My napkin was stiff, the kind of fabric that says, "We care about aesthetics, not comfort." Victoria, my older sister, barely glanced up from her mimosa. "Big weekend editing cat videos?" she asked. I smiled because that's what you do when you're cornered in public, by family. "No cats," I said, my voice light. "Just a few clips for a client in LA. "A client?" She raised an eyebrow. "Like, someone actually pays you for that?" The table chuckled. Caleb, my younger brother, tried to hide his smile behind a bite of his Belgian waffle. My father focused on stirring his coffee, never looking up. My mom sighed. "She marches to the beat of her own drum," she offered, like a shield that had worn thin from overuse. That line again. They used it when I skipped prom, when I didn't apply to law school, when I spent 6 months living out of a shared studio apartment editing gaming montages while eating noodles out of a mug. It wasn't admiration. It was code for, "We don't know what the hell she's doing, and we've stopped trying." Victoria adjusted her napkin on her lap like she was arranging power. "You're almost 30, Elise. At what point does it stop being cute and start being sad?" The server brought out our food then, as if summoned by dramatic timing. A stack of sourdough French toast landed in front of me. I didn't touch it. My croissant, warm and golden, sat untouched too, like me. Conversation moved on. Victoria talked about a new merger she was overseeing, casually dropping phrases like cross-border compliance and contractual arbitration, like cocktail olives. Caleb shared something about his lab's newest prosthetic model, and everyone leaned in with interest. No one asked me what I was working on. I sipped my lukewarm coffee and twisted my napkin tighter and tighter in my lap until it looked like a rope. That afternoon, I walked home even though I could have taken the bus. I needed the air. The sidewalk shimmered with heat, the kind that makes everything look slightly warped, like you're walking through someone else's dream. When I got back to my apartment, a cramped one-bedroom over a dry cleaner in Fremont, I didn't take off my shoes. I just dropped my purse, collapsed into my desk chair, and opened my laptop. It whirred like it was tired, too. I had messages. A group chat lit up with a photo from brunch. Everyone tagged, except me. I muted the thread. Then I opened Facebook, hovered over my profile picture, and selected Deactivate Account. I didn't want to be seen. Not like that. Not by them. My desk was pushed against a wall with peeling paint, and the desk itself had a leg that wobbled unless I wedged a folded coaster underneath. My whiteboard, propped against the floor, still had faint scribbles from a month ago. Cut at 13, watch audio spike, pitch to creator fund, and then there was the folder on my desktop. Clippalit, early mock-up. The name made me wince a little. I'd come up with it during a late night in college, too much caffeine and too little sleep. A content optimizer for short-form video, designed to analyze pacing, audio, even eye movement. It wasn't just code. It was hope written in Python. I hadn't opened the file in weeks. Now, with the sting of Victoria's voice still echoing in my ribs, I clicked it open. The UI was crude. Buttons in the wrong place, features only half-tested. But I scrolled anyway. Scanned notes I had once written to myself like prayers. Viewer retention spikes at cuts. Don't trim authenticity. Silence is its own beat. Outside, a motorcycle backfired. I didn't flinch. For years, I had played the part of the family clown, the lovable mess, the one who never quite figured it out but maybe had potential. It was easier than trying to explain a dream they didn't believe in, but something cracked at brunch. Not because of the words, but the silence that followed them. No one defended me. Not even a shrug from Caleb or a redirect from Mom. They weren't waiting for me to succeed. They were counting on me to fail. It made them feel better. It kept the narrative tidy. I closed all my tabs and stared at my empty screen. Then I opened a new file. A redesign of ClipPilot's architecture. No music, no snacks, just me and the code. That night, I worked until 3 a.m., and I didn't stop to check if anyone noticed, because they didn't know it yet, but they'd already lost access to me. I didn't argue, I didn't scream, I just built. While Victoria floated between brunches and boardrooms, and Caleb posted lab photos from conferences I couldn't pronounce, I sat on the second floor of a dusty building that smelled permanently like starch and steam. The dry cleaner downstairs opened at 7 a.m. sharp, and every morning, the hiss of pressing machines crept through my floor like a soft alarm. My world was this: a desk wedged under a cracked window, blinds that curled like stale paper, a chair I bought for $10 from a Craigslist post titled "Barely Broken." On the wall, sticky notes bloomed like a patchwork prayer. Yellow, pink, green, each one scrawled with ideas, fragments of algorithms and intuition. Color curve equals 70% retention. Punch beats before transitions. Don't trim authenticity. Some days I barely left my chair. My meals blurred between instant noodles, black coffee, and whatever granola bar hadn't expired. I used to think burnout came with dramatic warning signs, panic attacks, crying in parking lots. Turns out, it also looks like sitting in the dark, coding frame rates with aching wrists and forgetting whether it was Tuesday or Thursday. That was when I met Jamie. It started with a comment on a freelance forum, a thread about AI-driven editing tools. I had posted a vague question about adaptive pacing models, and his reply came within 6 minutes. Sounds like you're building a tool. Want to build it faster? He didn't send a resume. He didn't ask for mine. Instead, we swapped Slack handles, started pinging code snippets, testing variables, breaking each other's logic, and laughing about it. Jamie was brilliant. Burned out, yes, but sharp in a way that made me feel like I'd been underwater before we spoke. He'd worked at a big tech company for 4 years, left without fanfare, no LinkedIn announcement, just an email to his team that said, "I miss being human." Together we started again. He handled the back end. I focused on the UI and user experience. ClipPilot wasn't just a tool, it was a rebellion. We wanted creators to understand why videos worked, not just chase trends. We built analytics that highlighted spikes in engagement, audio leveling, and frame composition. We called it intuitive structure, a system that didn't just analyze, it educated. We didn't sleep much, we didn't get paid, but we built. Our first beta tester was a Twitch streamer with an erratic upload schedule and 1,200 followers. He called our tool surprisingly not trash. That was our first win. We got 5 users, then 15, then 200, and then we crashed. Our server buckled during a Reddit promotion. The streamer community flooded our site, and it sputtered like an old car on a mountain climb. Jamie spent 20 hours straight patching code. I watched our error logs like a gambler eyeing a roulette wheel. The next week, a mid-level YouTuber tweeted that Clip Pilot butchered his content. I watched the retweets roll in. I closed my laptop and went for a walk. I didn't know where I was heading until I saw the glowing arches of Gasworks Park. The hill was quiet, just a few couples sitting in their own bubbles. The lake shimmered like it was trying to forget the city beside it. I sat on the slope, pulled out my phone, and opened the project folder. Hovering over the option, delete. It would be easy. One tap, one confirmation. No more unpaid bills, no more error logs, no more pretending I was building something important. Then my phone buzzed. From Jamie. Still in this with you. Just say the word. I stared at the message. I didn't respond. I didn't delete the folder either. I walked home in silence, made black coffee, and opened a clean notebook. On the first page, I wrote, "If silence is a language, let's make Clip Pilot fluent in it." We kept going. Sometimes Jamie's power went out mid-call. Sometimes I sold old clothes on Poshmark to pay for cloud services. Sometimes I cried without tears, just a tightening in my chest that made it hard to breathe. But the product got better. We built a Discord server. A few creators joined. Then a few more. Word spread. Not fast, but steady. By mid-2022, we had 100,000 users. No press release, no splashy TikTok ads. Just creators telling other creators, this thing actually helps. I watched users go from 500 views to 50,000. I watched sponsorship deals land for creators who once edited videos on borrowed iPads. And still, I said nothing. My family thought I was drifting. Victoria sent me a job posting for a nonprofit looking for media interns. My dad asked if I'd thought about something more stable. My mom mailed me a sweater for Christmas, 2 sizes too big, with a post-it, "Stay warm, baby." They didn't know Clip Pilot existed. Didn't know I had a team of 5. Didn't know that Jamie and I were preparing our first funding deck. And I didn't correct them. Because Jamie was right. Revenge didn't need to be loud, just visible. I moved my sticky notes to a corkboard, got a second monitor, started sleeping 5 hours instead of 3, and I built. I built while they whispered. I built while they pitied me. I built while brunches passed and birthdays passed, and I wasn't invited anymore. And still, they thought I had nothing going on. They weren't just wrong. They were about to find out how wrong. Every Monday morning, I started the same way. Black coffee, noise-canceling headphones, and a quick scan of our applicant tracker. By now, Clip Pilot was growing fast. We had moved into a shared space in South Lake Union, nestled between startups with names like Greenloop and Vidroir. The hallway always smelled like espresso and ambition. I didn't expect to see her name, but there it was. Victoria Harper. For a moment, I thought it was a prank. A cruel one. But I clicked the resume, and there was no mistaking it. Polished fonts. Perfect grammar. GPA listed like a badge of honor. And the name at the top that used to mock mine across a brunch table. Her cover letter was sleek, corporate in tone, but desperate underneath. She mentioned rebranding, seeking a mission-driven environment, and transitioning from traditional law to digital innovation. No mention of what she was transitioning from. No headlines, no damage control, just a perfectly sanitized plea. I scrolled to the end. No mention of me. I closed the document, leaned back, and stared at the exposed beam above my desk. Jamie walked by, a reusable cup in hand, nodding toward the conference room. "You good?" "Yeah," I said. "Just old ghosts." That afternoon, I sent a quick Slack message to Casey in HR. "Can you confirm something for me? Is this the Victoria Harper?" Casey replied in under a minute. "Yep, Harvard Law. She applied blind. Probably doesn't know who we are." Probably. Or maybe she did, and just hoped I wouldn't notice. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I closed my laptop and walked 2 blocks to meet Mia, an old college friend who now worked in legal consulting. She was already seated at our usual cafe, sipping an oat milk latte and tapping away on her phone. "You didn't hear?" Mia asked when I brought up Victoria's name. "Hear what?" "She got burned. Bad. Her firm mishandled a merger. Client data leaked. Big names. NDAS. Someone dropped the ball and her name was on half the emails." I blinked. "Is she being sued?" Mia shook her head. "Not officially, but let's just say she's unhearable for now. Blacklisted in a few circles. Everyone's pretending it's temporary, but you know how it works." I did. I stirred my coffee without drinking it. "She applied to my company." Mia looked up. "Seriously?" "She doesn't know I'm behind it," I said. Mia grinned. "That's poetic." "It's something," I replied, staring out the window. "But I'm not interested in poetry." I didn't gloat. I didn't share the news with our team Slack. I didn't forward her resume with a snarky caption or joke with Jamie about karma. I just sat with it. Let it settle in my chest like a stone dropped into still water. Because here was the thing. She had come to me, unknowingly, but still. I didn't delete her application. I didn't respond to her email. I just scheduled her for an interview. With me. The following Thursday, I arrived early to our downtown office. The morning was clear, Seattle's version of spring, where the sky looked blue, but the wind still bit through your sleeves. I wore black, not for drama, but because it made me feel clean, collected, like I belonged to myself. The conference room was all glass and steel, minimalist but warm. I laid her resume flat on the table, folded my hands, waited. At 10:02, the door opened. She walked in with a smile and a folder clutched in her hands. She didn't recognize me at first. Her eyes scanned the room, likely expecting someone older, maybe someone with a title under their name. Then her gaze landed on me. "Elise?" She blinked. I smiled. "Hi. You work here?" Her voice lifted, halfway between surprise and amusement. "I do," I said, voice steady. She laughed, the same way she used to when I told her I had a new project. "Small world. Are you in admin? Marketing?" I looked her in the eye. "No," I said. "I'm the founder." She froze. Not dramatically, but her lips parted slightly. Her fingers tightened around the folder. "No, you're not," she said, like a reflex. "I am," I replied, still calm. "Clip Pilot is mine." Silence. The kind that stretches and folds in on itself. The kind that hums louder than words. She sat down slowly, like her legs were no longer sure of themselves. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I'm sure," I replied. "It's not public knowledge." She nodded, eyes flicking to the glass walls, the logo on the wall behind me, the small touches I had chosen over the years. She cleared her throat. "This feels surreal." I leaned forward slightly, keeping my tone neutral. "Let's talk about your experience." Her smile faltered. "Now? You're here for an interview, aren't you?" She opened her folder but didn't look down. "I've followed the company's growth, especially after your recent Series B." That was a lie. We hadn't announced anything. There was no Series B. "I see," I said, tone still level. "And what do you think we do?" She paused. Just long enough. Then, "You're a content platform that helps enhance videos?" "Not quite," I corrected. "We help creators understand their own content. We don't enhance, we educate." She nodded, eyes now darting. She hadn't done her homework. She hadn't even tried. The rest of the interview was brief. I kept it professional, emotionless. Asked about her skills, her goals, what she was looking for in her next chapter. She answered and practiced phrases, but her voice was thinner now, her posture tighter. She was trying to perform, but the stage had changed. I ended the conversation with a simple line. "You'll hear from HR within the week." She stood, holding her folder like a lifeline. "Thank you for the opportunity." I nodded. She walked out slower than she'd walked in, and for once, I didn't feel the need to look back, because she froze, and I didn't. She walked in like she always did, heels clicking like exclamation points, chin slightly lifted, confidence layered on like a second blazer. The room didn't pause for her, though. Not this time. And for once, the air wasn't charged by her presence. It was steady. Mine. We were in one of Clip Pilot's quieter conference rooms, glass walls, sleek table, 2 chairs facing each other like a mirror image, and a single clock that ticked just loud enough to notice once everything else went still. I'd chosen this room on purpose, not because it was grand, but because it was neutral. It gave her nowhere to anchor her usual dominance. She noticed me immediately. Her stride hesitated by half a beat before she masked it. "Elise," she said, with a smile that hadn't adjusted to reality yet. "This is unexpected." I motioned to the chair across from me without standing. "Thanks for coming in." She sat down carefully, placing her resume folder in front of her like it might protect her. Her outfit was impeccable, navy with silver accents, the kind of presentation you wear when you're trying to prove you haven't lost control. I noted the subtle twitch in her hand as she adjusted her sleeve. She was trying to stay composed. I didn't blame her. "So," she said, that same upward lilt in her voice she used when she thought she had the upper hand. "Do you work in HR now? Or maybe marketing?" I let a few seconds pass before answering. "No," I said simply. "I'm the founder." Silence bloomed. Not the awkward kind, the clarifying kind, like light turning on in a room someone thought was empty. Her mouth parted slightly, then closed. Her eyes flicked toward the glass wall behind me, where the Clip Pilot logo was etched in frosted white. She seemed to be recalculating the universe. "You're the Elise who built this?" she asked, voice flatter now. I nodded once. The confidence drained slowly from her face. Her shoulders stayed square, but I could tell she'd lost her footing, and she wasn't used to that. "Well," she said, with forced casualness, "I guess I'm even more excited for this opportunity." I opened the folder in front of me, not hers, but mine. Blank notes, just in case I needed the prop. I didn't. "Let's begin," I said. She dove into a rehearsed summary of her experience, peppering in keywords like cross-functional strategy and client-first mentality. I listened without reacting, letting her speak into the room until her words started looping in on themselves. I'd heard her perform this role before, at family dinners, at holiday parties, even at my expense. I've been following Clip Pilot's growth, she said, leaning slightly forward. Especially after the Series B, that kind of confidence from investors is impressive. I tilted my head. There hasn't been a Series B. Her lips pressed together, forming a tight smile. Oh. Must have misread something. I nodded. Maybe. I let the silence stretch just long enough to feel like a line being drawn. She fidgeted with the corner of her resume. I kept my tone even. What's your biggest professional regret? She blinked. I could almost hear the mental shuffle of prepared responses. I'd say, not trusting my instincts, especially in high-stakes scenarios. I let processes override what I knew was right. Are you referring to the confidentiality breach? I asked calmly. Her spine stiffened. That name, the unspoken incident, hung between us like a fog only she hadn't walked through. I'm surprised you know about that. I know what I need to, I replied, especially about someone applying to report directly to me. She tried to recover. It wasn't all my fault. There were multiple people involved, leadership decisions above me. I followed protocol. I didn't nod. I didn't judge. I believe you, I said, but I'm not here to assign blame, just assess judgment. For the first time, her voice faltered. So, what kind of role are you actually hiring for? I laid it out as plainly as possible. Junior operations associate. It's a probationary contract, 90 days, fixed salary, reports to me. There was no flair in my voice, just facts. Her expression didn't change at first. Then came the micro-reactions, slight squint, shallow breath, her knuckles tightening against the folder in her lap. Junior, she repeated, as though saying it might make it change. Yes. Her jaw worked. No argument came. I see, she murmured. You'll be interviewed again, I added. Same as every other candidate. This conversation doesn't grant special status. Another pause. Then, in a voice much smaller than she usually allowed herself, You'd consider hiring me? I met her eyes, not cold, not triumphant, just steady. You'll be interviewed, I said. That's not the same thing. She didn't speak again. She gathered her folder, left the coffee untouched, and walked out with a silence that used to belong to me. Now it belonged to her. Jamie found me later that day, standing by the kitchenette staring into my half-empty mug. He held a fresh coffee out to me without asking, because he never needed to. She gone? He asked. Yeah, I said, sipping. Just left. He leaned against the counter, not rushing me. You didn't humiliate her. I shrugged, more tired than victorious. Didn't need to. Reality already did. He offered a small smile. You okay? I think I am, I said. It's strange, though. What is? That when you finally stand in the place they always said you'd never reach, it doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like silence. He nodded, and we stood there, letting it settle. There's nothing louder than a dinner table full of people pretending nothing happened. The Harper house looked exactly the same as it had for 2 decades. Off-white walls, polished hardwood, the smell of overcooked turkey floating through the hall like tradition on autopilot. A ceramic pilgrim centerpiece sat between bowls of too dry stuffing and cranberry sauce from a can, still shaped like the can. It was a Thanksgiving gathering like any other, except that it wasn't. I hadn't been back in nearly 2 years. 2 years of ignored texts, half-hearted invites, and me declining politely or not at all. But this year, Mom insisted. It's time to come together again, she wrote in her message, as if time healed the kind of fractures that had roots. So I came, not out of longing, not out of guilt, out of closure. When I walked in, no one really reacted, just a few nods. A tight hug from my dad that felt more habitual than heartfelt. Victoria was already there, seated at the far end of the table, smiling too wide, talking too fast. She was performing again. I took my place quietly, a few seats down from her. My plate was already set. Forks arranged just so. A sprig of rosemary folded into the napkin like it had something to prove. The chatter floated around me, safe topics only. Caleb's new research, my cousin's engagement, someone's dog who learned to open drawers. No one asked me about work. It was almost impressive, the way they managed to navigate entirely around the subject of my existence outside these walls. I glanced down the hallway and saw the same frame degrees lining the wall, Victoria's law diploma, Caleb's undergrad honors. There was no trace of me. But that wasn't new. I used to film our Thanksgivings, propped a camcorder in the corner and caught the whole night in shaky, warm frames. Back then, I thought it was enough to just be the one who captured everyone else. This year, I had finally taken a seat. Dinner passed in clinks and chewing, wine refilled without anyone getting up. At one point, Caleb tried to ask if I still did video stuff, but Mom cut him off with a story about her neighbor's cat with asthma. It was almost funny how thoroughly they could avoid a subject when it made them uncomfortable. Until dessert. Mom passed out slices of pie like communion and turned to Victoria with a soft smile. "So, sweetie, how's the consulting going?" "Still with that creative company?" Victoria blinked, fork in hand, halfway to her mouth. "Yes," she said, voice just slightly higher than usual. "Yes, still there." Mom nodded, pleased. "It's amazing how quickly you've adapted. What's the company called again?" Victoria froze. It was brief, but I caught it. The flicker of panic behind her eyes. She opened her mouth. "She works at Clip Pilot," I said. The room stopped. My tone wasn't loud, wasn't sharp, just factual. "She started 3 weeks ago. Junior operations, 90-day probationary." Silence stretched across the table like a second tablecloth. Forks stopped. Glasses lowered. Dad furrowed his brow. "Wait, isn't that the thing you used to mess around with? On your computer?" I nodded, calm. "It's grown a bit." "You work there too?" Caleb asked, glancing between us. I took a sip of water before replying. "I own it." A beat passed, then another. Someone's fork clattered softly onto their plate. Victoria stared at her pie. Mom's mouth opened, then closed. She reached for her wine like it might steady her. "Well," she said finally, gripping the stem of the glass. "Isn't that something?" I stood, folding my napkin slowly, slid it beside my untouched pie. "For years," I said, "you told me to grow up. Get a real job." They all looked at me now. I shrugged gently. "Now I own the company your favorite child works for." And with that, I reached for my coat, slipped it over my shoulders. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay. As I walked toward the front door, I passed the hallway again. The degrees still hung like shrines to potential fulfilled. I paused at the edge of the wall, remembering. There had once been a photo there, one I took when I was 15. Everyone smiling around the table, me behind the camera, always behind. But this year, I had written myself into the frame. I stepped outside into the cold evening, the smell of dry leaves and leftover turkey lingering in the air. No one followed. And for once, I didn't want them to. Victoria lasted 4 months. She was never late, never missed a meeting, but she was never really there. She did the work, bare minimum, polished surface, but the spark she used to wear like perfume was gone. Her posture still said law firm, but her eyes said somewhere else. She never disrespected me, but she never acknowledged me either. Maybe that was her way of surviving it, by pretending this was just another job, that the desk beside the window wasn't assigned by the sister she once pitied. When she handed in her resignation, it came in the form of a quiet email, addressed not to me directly, but to HR, CC'd politely. "Thank you for the opportunity," she wrote. "I've learned a lot." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I forwarded it to HR, approved the termination, scheduled her exit interview for Friday at 2 p.m. She showed up, answered all the questions, signed the forms, and left with a neutral smile. No drama, no accusations, just silence, which for once was her most honest response. That Monday, the office was full of light. We had just finished a small renovation, more natural wood, more plants. A few of our newest hires had brought in little touches, a tiny cactus in a ceramic whale, a lava lamp, even a bobblehead of some niche YouTuber I didn't recognize. ClipPilot had grown from 2 laptops and borrowed bandwidth to a real team. Real vision. We didn't chase trends. We set them. Jamie leaned against the wall near the kitchenette, stirring honey into his coffee. "So, she's gone." "Yeah," I said, flipping through a feedback report on our newest edit tracking feature. "You okay?" "I was never not okay," I replied. He nodded, smiling to himself. "You know, you never gloated. Not once." "Why would I?" said. "Revenge is just a mirror. I don't need to see her reflection to know who I am." He grinned. "That's a t-shirt." I laughed, actually laughed, and for the first time in months, it didn't sound like armor. It sounded like me. 3 days later, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text. A letter. Handwritten in my mother's familiar cursive that always looped the L's a little too high. It was on soft cream paper, folded once. "Elise, I don't know how you did it, but I see it now. I see you, Mom." No explanation, no apology, just that. I didn't cry, but I did stare at it for a long time. Then I pinned it on my corkboard, right next to the earliest sketches of ClipPilot, where I'd once scrawled, "Retention equals trust," and circled it 3 times. Underneath it, a sticky note Jamie wrote during our first week. "Let the numbers speak." I took a deep breath, not because I was overwhelmed, but because peace, it turns out, is quieter than I expected. On Friday, I walked to the office like usual, hoodie up, headphones in. Seattle's morning air buzzed with coffee carts, bus breaks, the low murmur of the city stretching into itself. I turned the corner near Pike Place and stopped. A new billboard had gone up overnight, one of those animated ones that rotated content like digital flashcards. This one featured a creator I remembered from our beta days, a nervous teenager who used to email us questions at midnight about jump cuts and how to not sound awkward on camera. Now she had 1 million subscribers, a sponsorship with a gaming brand, a book deal on the way. She smiled from the billboard, mid-laugh in a freeze frame, with a caption glowing underneath, powered by ClipPilot. I didn't feel pride. I felt stillness. Like something inside me had aligned. They used to laugh at my online hobby, mocked my laptop, dismissed my silence. Now they apply for jobs inside the world I built. I passed a cafe window and saw someone editing a video on their laptop, ClipPilot's interface unmistakable, with its signature timeline highlights and retention curves. They were wearing headphones, nodding along to the beats of their cut, smiling when they got it just right. They didn't know me, and I didn't need them to, because the truth was, I didn't need to be in the picture anymore. I had built the frame. Sometimes, the sweetest sound is silence, the kind that follows years of being overlooked, but never defeated. Watching someone succeed with a tool I once built in the dark reminded me, I never needed the spotlight. I just needed to build something that mattered. In life, we don't always get apologies, but we can choose peace. And when we stop chasing approval, we often find something greater: clarity, purpose, and maybe even grace. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear what part stayed with you most. Feel free to share your thoughts. I'm still listening, just not explaining anymore.